Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much. Many of you knew what to do. I have been coming to this event for up teen years now, and every time we go through this, so when I extend the greeting, it is your job to return it. Many of you knew that, but not all of you, so we are going to do it again. Good morning, everyone. Much better. See, your voices resonate in this room when you really work at it. So thank you very much for having me today. My name is Micah Kubic. I'm the executive director of the ACLU of Kansas. And I am so very happy to be here with you again today. Happy Kansas Day to you. It is especially important that we celebrate Kansas Day because when Kansas came into the Union, came into the country, which is what Kansas Day celebrates, it did so for a reason. And the reason was an entire set of values around freedom and justice and equality and democracy. You can see those in the murals all around the building. They put them up for a reason to remind us about those values. And so it is particularly important that we celebrate Kansas Day and those values because there are a whole bunch of folks running around who want to take us back 2,000 years. Not just to before when Kansas became a state, but all the way back to the reign of Nebuchadnezzar. So let us celebrate Kansas Day not just because it is a day, but for what it means, which is our commitment to freedom, to justice, to equality, to our shared values. So I'm always happy to come and talk with you folks at the League. We are so very proud to partner with you at the League of Women Voters at the ACLU. We have been in this fight together, both locally and nationally, since the very beginning. So the ACLU was founded just a few months after the National League of Women Voters was, and so we have been in it together fighting for voting rights since our inception, and so I'm glad that we're still in a relationship today. We have endured it all. So I'm particularly going to talk this morning about the judicial selection amendment that is coming up. But obviously, I think we will have a little time for questions, and so I welcome hearing anything else that is on your mind, because there is a lot that is happening in this state, in this nation. I would normally say that I am happy to be here in this building, but my parents raised me not to lie. And I'm not happy to be in this building today because of the way that they are assaulting those shared values that we just talked about, dispensing with any rudimentary process, dispensing with even pretending to care what people think, on top of all of the issues that they are moving forward on. So, I was thinking a little bit on the drive over here this morning about what specifically I wanted to say to you today. And I was reminded that not too long ago, I had the very great privilege of meeting a woman named Joan Trumpauer Mulholland, who was one of the Freedom Riders, who was one of a member of SNCC, an activist in basically every major civil rights demonstration you can think of in the 1960s. And in particular, there's this very famous photo of her that went all over the world when she was at a lunch counter demonstration in Jackson, Mississippi. And that famous photo is of the white supremacists around her pouring ketchup and mustard and condiments all over her to abuse and insult her for advocating for civil rights. And so when I had the privilege of meeting Miss Joan, she was telling her story, telling us what it was like being in the thick of it that way. And she was talking in particular about how she was sitting on the lunch counter stool and was physically dragged off of it to the back of the room. And so someone in our little group that was meeting with her said, well, what was going through your mind when that happened? When all of that was happening, what were you thinking about? And she said, how to get back to that counter. How to get back to that counter. And so that's what I am thinking about today, even in the context of this judicial selection amendment we had, which is with all of the distraction, all of the things that are happening, all of the assaults on our shared values that are happening all over this state and this country. The way we're going to get out of that is by being resilient, persistent, and focused. And that means we got to get back to the counter. No matter how they try and lead us astray, no matter what comes up, we got to focus on how we get back to the counter. And for us, right now in Kansas, come August 2026, I believe that the single most important way that we get back to the counter is by making sure that folks know the truth about this judicial selection amendment. And I say that, it seems like a technocratic, boring thing, and it is, but it is also the single most important thing we can do on all of the issues that we care about. I don't care if your number one issue is voting rights, this is the most important thing to do. I don't care if your most important issue is reproductive freedom, this is the most important thing to do. I don't care if your most important issue is racial justice, this is the most important thing to do. I don't care if your most important issue is LGBTQ plus equality, this is the most important thing to do. I don't care if your most important issue is immigrants' rights, this is the most important thing to do. I don't care if your most important issue is the separation of powers, basic accountability, and the preservation of democracy itself, this is the most important thing to do. And so we got to get back to the counter. We got to get back to the counter. Now, why do I say it is the most important thing to do? The answer to that is because on all of those issues that I just named and any other one that you can dream up, if I didn't name it, just assume I said it, right? But it's there, okay? Whatever the issue is, it can go to the Kansas State Supreme Court. And particularly in the environment in which we are living, where there are folks who don't want there to be guardrails, who don't want there to be separation of powers, who don't want there to be accountability or restraint on anything they want to do, having the Kansas Supreme Court as an independent, objective, impartial force is the way that we protect all of those things. And that is especially true today with the federal courts being what they are. I'm not going to knock on the federal courts, let's be clear, but it is also true that there are many things that are happening where federal court is not going to be the recipe, is not going to be the solution that it used to be in past years. And so groups like ours, like the League, like the ACLU, are going to stick Supreme Courts all over this country because the federal courts are not always hospitable. And on top of that, every state has its own constitution. Every state has its own constitution separate from the U.S. Constitution. Every one of those is different. Every one of those state constitutions contains different protections, different rights. And that is true here in Kansas as well, where our state constitution provides stronger protections for many of the rights and freedoms that we care about than the U.S. Constitution does. And those things, those disputes are resolved where? At the Kansas State Supreme Court. And so that's why it's so important. That's why I say if you care about civil liberties, if you care about civil rights, if you care about any of these things right now, the way to get back to the counter is to worry about this amendment in August, okay? So I got 3 quick things I want to mention to you about this. The first is that it is really important that you know and that you tell everybody you know what our current system is, right? One of the ways that we will make sure that we protect the impartiality of our court is for folks just to know what it is. There are millions of people in Kansas who are not in this room right now. They are not as engaged as you are. They are not as on top of it as you are. And so they don't even know that the Kansas Supreme Court exists. They don't know that that's a thing. Our job is to let folks know what our system is, which is that it is the envy of the nation. We have the best of all worlds in the setup of our Kansas State Supreme Court, because we have a system that rewards merit and judicial temperament and impartiality while also giving everyday folks and voters a voice in the process. We get the best of both worlds. So right now, there are 7 members of the Kansas State Supreme Court. They serve terms. They have a retirement age. It's not like the federal courts where we can't get rid of Clarence Thomas and Alito no matter what we do. There's a mandatory retirement age here in Kansas for Supreme Court justices. And there is a nominating commission that helps figure out who should go on that court. So whenever there is a vacancy, if someone retires, if someone steps down, the nominating commission exists to screen candidates for those jobs. And the nominating commission is made up partly of community experts, legal scholars, former Supreme Court justices, folks from the legal community who know that being a judge is also a job. It involves tasks. It involves responsibilities, right? They want to make sure that someone can do that job and that they have the judicial temperament. That is of being independent, objective, nonpartisan, not taking sides, but really trying to figure out the answer to the question. So about half come from that, and another half are appointed by whoever the governor is on that day. They are appointed by congressional district so that every part of the state gets represented. It is designed to make sure that you get feedback from all different types of people, too. Folks from different backgrounds can assess who should go on the court. They have an open process where if you want to be on the Supreme Court, first of all, you do have to be a lawyer. But other than that, you just fill out an application form. You send in material. You send in your resume, just like you would for any other job in the world. And the nominating commission then reviews all of those in an open and transparent way. They do it in an open hearing that you can go and watch. You can go and sit in the room while they do it. They stream it too. All of the materials are available to anybody who wants to read through them. Even the discussion that the commission has about why one candidate is great and another one is lousy happens in public. They don't get to conceal or hide any criticisms they have of any of the individual candidates. They got to say it out loud for everyone to hear. And then they take 3 candidates, the top 3, and they send them to whoever the governor is on that day. And the governor picks from one of them so that the electorate has a choice in the matter. That person then goes on the court, but they have to go before the voters at the very next general election. And then the voters say, yes, keep them, or no, send them home. And then that justice has to go through that process every 6 years. Again, an up or down vote, yes, they're doing great, no, send them home. And so that means that we have the best of both worlds in both screening for merit, but giving everyday voters a voice in the process. There is a reason that since Kansas adopted this system in the 1950s, in response to a corruption scandal, by the way, because we like to think of ourselves as having clean politics here in Kansas, but that was the one huge glaring exception to the rule. So we have the system for a reason. And then other states have adopted it as well because it works. There is not one single state that has gone the other way. There's not one state that has gone from this nonpartisan merit system back to partisan elections. There are a bunch of states that have gone from elections to the merit-based system. That is because it works. It takes us forward rather than back in time. So it is, yes. It does not. There is not a ratification. There is not approval by the Senate. It is not like the federal model because the voters are the ones who have the final say over it at that retention election, not the 40 people who sit in the Senate chamber over there. So it is really, really, really important that both you know the contours of this system, but also that you let people in your communities know about this too. They don't necessarily need to know all the details, right? But they do need to know that the court exists. That's a great place to start. Secondly, that there is a merit-based system that is designed to get community input and create impartiality, and that voters still have a say in the process. Those 3 things are really, really important for people to know. Because otherwise, when they walk into that voting booth in August, they are going to be confronted with some ballot language that just says, hey, you want to vote for some people? And a lot of them are probably going to say yes, not because they've weighed the options so carefully, but just because they don't know what the current system is. And when they learn about the current system, most people say, hey, actually, that sounds pretty good. That sounds like a good deal. And so we need to make sure people know that. Okay, so that's the first point. If we're going to get back to the counter, we got to let people know what our current system is. Second thing is, what do they want to take us to? All right, so if this judicial selection amendment were to pass, what would it do? It would mean that all 7 members of the Kansas Supreme Court are elected in partisan elections, probably on a statewide basis. And what that means is you will have judges who are politicians rather than judges. It will be a partisan fight, and it will be a big money fight that brings in millions of dollars from external parties, from folks, from billionaires. Pick the one you dislike, no matter what side of the aisle they're on. Billionaires will be fighting over control of the Kansas State Supreme Court. They recently had a Supreme Court election in Wisconsin where they spent $100 million for 1 seat on the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. Those folks saw a lot of Elon Musk while that was happening. I personally would prefer not to endure such a tragedy as to have him here on the ground. So let us avoid having big money, millions of dollars, pouring in to state Supreme Court races. Let us not have them be partisan, and let us not have them be on a statewide basis. Because what that really will mean is that only a few parts of the state will have representation. Only a few parts of the state will really have a chance at getting elected in that sort of statewide thing, and that is a problem. More importantly, though, here, what it does is change what our courts are about. It changes the courts from being about impartiality and objectivity and people getting a fair hearing into a partisan and political process. We want judges to be judges because you want to be able to go in front of the court and feel like you're going to get a fair shake no matter what. Maybe you'll win, maybe you'll lose, but a judge is someone who listens to the arguments, who listens to what is being said, and tries to figure out what is consistent with the law, not what is consistent with the agenda of any politician or party. And that is what we have gotten out of this Kansas Supreme Court. Which is that they have ruled against Governor Brownback, they have ruled against Governor Sebelius, they have ruled against Governor Kelly, they have ruled against Governor Collier. They don't care about those politics. They constrain and rein people in when there are violations of the Kansas State Constitution, regardless of party or politics. And that is what we want. We at the ACLU, we go in front of them a lot. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. There's a couple of the members that I don't particularly care for. That's okay. That's what happens in a society where we are all vested in the long-term interests of the community rather than short-term gain and benefit. I would much rather go in front of a court where I know, regardless of what my issue is, I'm going to get a fair hearing rather than a political one where the outcome is never in doubt because everyone made up their mind based on their politics going in. That's why we have 2 different jobs. We have judges and we have politicians, and we should not make them one and the same. But that is what will happen through this amendment, is judges will become politicians, and we will lose independence, we will lose impartiality, and people themselves will be the ones who lose in the end. So that's the second thing. The third and final thing that I want to note here is I've just described to you why I believe, why we at the folks who are organizing against this amendment believe that a partisan court is a bad thing because it compromises independence, because it gets rid of judiciary, it gets rid of separation of powers, it creates one unitary power that is vested right here in the legislature. I describe that, I think it's a bad thing. When I describe it, do you think it's a bad thing? Does that sound bad? Okay. So the folks who are behind this amendment, when I describe it that way, they say, well, yeah, that's exactly the point. They think it sounds like a great idea. And the reason for that is because, let us be clear, this is not just about process. This is not just about mechanisms. This is not some sort of noble effort to find the optimal way to staff a state Supreme Court. The folks who are behind this amendment have been very clear that they want to get rid of impartiality because they don't like that the court rules against them sometimes. They have been loud and upfront about the fact that they don't like that the Kansas Supreme Court ruled that the state constitution protects reproductive freedom. They don't like that the state constitution protects public education funding. They don't like that the state courts have so far said there are rights for LGBTQ plus people. They don't like that the courts have sometimes intervened in voting rights fights. They don't like any of that. They don't like the outcome. It's not the process that bothers them. It's that the process is leading to outcomes they don't like. And rather than being mature, sophisticated adults like all of us here, they say instead, let us change the rules of the game so that we win every time. That's what it's about. And it is about a very particular agenda, where the folks behind this amendment, led by Attorney General Chris Kubic and Senate President Ty Masterson, have said at every opportunity that if they were able to change the state Supreme Court, the very first thing they would do is get rid of the state-level protections for abortion access, which, by the way, 59% of Kansas voters supported when they had the opportunity. And then they would go after public school funding next, and then they have a wish list of all the things they've wanted over the last few years, all the ways that we have drawn Kansas forward into history. They want to go through that wish list and take us back as far as they can. And so let us be clear about what this amendment means. It is not, for all of the technical language, really about process. It is not even really about who is going to be on the court. It is instead an attempt to undermine the shared values that we articulated on the very first Kansas Day. It is an attempt to undermine the shared values that the court has articulated in the meantime. And it is a way to undermine the shared values that all of us have and want our state to be. So let us be clear about the stakes. That is why I said at the beginning, this is the most important thing you can do, because it crosses across all of those issues. And it's not just, we're voting on it in August 2026. But it's not just about 2026. It's also about 2036 and 2046 and 2056 and beyond. This is the thing that will shape the future of this state for a long, long time. Longer than any candidate race, longer even than any bill that goes through this legislature. This constitutional amendment is the thing where we say, what kind of Kansas will we be? And so for all of those reasons, I'm telling you, we got to get back to the counter. We got work to do. We got work to do. We got work to do because we cannot be distracted. We cannot be pulled into all sorts of, there are lots of important things happening. I'm not telling you not to care about those. What I am saying is let's focus on the bigger picture. Let's focus on the lever that we can pull that will have the biggest change. And that means that this state Supreme Court fight is the way that we get back to the counter. Thank you very much. You got time for questions? So I think we do have time for questions. I hate you, Zombo.
When the breeze, the black fisherman umbrella, some was managed to get well engaged to workers and read feet package. What do you think are favorite messages or cheap ways to get number people trolling issues? Because I mean that's over.
Yeah, so there is an official campaign that is organizing against this, Kansas United for Impartial Courts. So I'm here today representing Quick is what it's called. And so we have a very robust strategy to mobilize people, to engage people the same way that we did in 2022. Most of the partners who were involved in the Vote No campaign then are involved again. It is the same team, including staff and consultants and things like that. And so it is something that is on our mind every single day. And I think it really does come down to the stakes, right? We got to let people know what the real stakes here are. If it is just a question of what is the optimal way to select a Supreme Court, we're missing the picture, and we're not going to mobilize people to come out, because that, with all due respect to the civics nerds amongst us, that is not something that causes people to get out of bed in the morning to go vote for the optimal way of selecting the Supreme Court. If, however, we make it clear what the stakes are and that this is a rerun of the abortion amendment in 2022, but also a rerun of the Brownback era public school fights and a rerun of all of the national level debates about rights that are happening now, I think that's the way that we will mobilize people to do so. And we will have the infrastructure and mechanisms to do that as we did in 2022. Thank you.
What will be wording be when we go by miss? Sometime like in that
Yeah, so we do have the wording for the amendment. They have to, when they approved it last year, they had to give us what the wording was, as well as the ballot statement. So in 2022, I would say that the wording was really very tricky, right? So a lot of people were confused by what the 2022 amendment would do. The folks who wrote it did that because they hoped that they would confuse people into voting yes. Instead, what actually happens in the real world is if you're confused by something, you vote no because you think it's a trick, and it was. This time around, I will say that that is not as big of a concern. I think the wording of the amendment is very clear this time. You will know exactly what it does. You may not know what the current system is to compare it to, but you will know what it would propose doing. And that is why it is so important that we make sure that folks understand the stakes of the race, not just the ballot language. The ballot language here describes the technical change, but not the community-wide change that would result from this. And that's where folks just like you all around the state are the key to explaining to people what is printed there is not the whole story.
But I get two quote questions for you. One, what? How did it change for a Court of Appeals when it went to set population? I noticed that this says poorly. Have you noticed any changes with that? And secondly, if this constitutional network passed, there will be a follow-up bill next session that would then determine whether it's partisan or nonpartisan. And secondly, how the seven to wind up for their original election.
Yes. So in terms of the change when the Court of Appeals switched its selection process, I think the most important thing here to remember is that so long as the Kansas State Supreme Court remains independent and impartial, changes at the lower court level matter less, because the state Supreme Court both sets the tone, but is also the final arbiter of the decisions along the way. And so I think trying to compare, there are some counties across the state, for example, that do already have partisan elections for judges. You can have a different opinion about that. I think the most important thing to note is that there is a difference in the type, the expectation, and the tone that happens when the state Supreme Court is this way versus lower court level. Don't compare the two, because they're both fruits, but they are genuinely apples and oranges, like two different things with different roles. And then the second question, yes. So when they proposed this constitutional amendment, they also, the legislature, reserved for themselves the right to pass all of the rules about it. So in terms of whether there would be districts, in terms of how the seven current members would come up for election, whether it would happen all at once, whether it would be phased, what the position numbers would be. Nobody knows any of the answers to those because the architects have declined to tell us what their answer is. They just said, pass the amendment, and then we'll figure it out. Trust us. Do y'all trust them? If so, please see me afterwards. We'll have a conversation, right? Like, that cannot be the answer on something, regardless of your position about the amendment. Just saying, trust us, we'll figure out all of the details later, cannot be the correct answer in something as big and important as this. Is this the last one? Okay, this is the last one.
Yes. Regulars to stake this very scared guy. simply spitting that President I should be, but the Syria.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the simple answer is that if you remind people that you want judges to be judges rather than politicians, it triggers something different in their mind, right? Like, yes, we do elect those others because those are designed to be politicians. It's a different job. Do you want your judge to be a politician and have made up their mind before you even get to the hearing? Like, if you were going to even traffic court, do you want the judge to have made up their mind on a political basis before you even show up in the room? And most people would answer that no. And so I think that's the key, like reminding people we want judges, not politicians. Thank you all very much for having me today.